Hi, Kyle. How you doing? And Joseph, is the sound okay? And the picture? I mean, you can't do a lot about me, but everything turning out all right. Hi, Thomas. How are you? John, Raj. Hey, Watch Habit. Hi, Indrajit. Now, let me see. Is it very early in the morning, Indrajit, where you are? Like very early? Okay. Let's get started. We earlier today we had talked about a number of things that were, oh, if you have somebody says this and somebody else says this, oh my goodness. Hi, Hans. The We're trying to how to resolve them. And hi, Forbin. And what I thought we'd do today or this afternoon is sort of continue along those lines, except excuse me, just a little bit different. And the little bit different is sort of has to do with how you bring something together, saying, "Well, this is what's going on, and here's what happened." Now, recently, when I took a look at my Urban Jurgensen, and I'd written about it or had a talked about it, and then later on about the Alfred. Um, I gave a lot of credit to Derek Pratt as the watchmaker, and I got an email from the CEO at Urban Jurgensen. Well, it's not quite that way. You should have given more credit to so and so and so and so and okay, yeah. I What I was trying to do was sort of trace it back to the modern Urban Jurgensen with a real somebody who was really solid. Now he gave a great deal of credit uh, to the guy who was the head of it, the who had bought Urban Jurgensen and sort of set the sail, so to speak, on the modern Urban Jurgensen. And so I started thinking more and more about that. I thought, that's probably right. I give most of the credit to the watchmaker just because I think they're so important. Hey, how you doing, Clyde? Good to see you. Um, I'm wearing my Rolex Sky Dweller and would love to get your take on it. Well, I like them. Rolex Sky Dwellers are nice watches. I mean, I don't know. They have the thing I like about it. They have dual time, and I like the way they do it. So I haven't spent that much time looking at it. Now ask me about a Yachtmaster too, and I could talk about that. Hi Hans. Hi Carl. How you doing? Good to see you again. So anyway, the thing I suppose I'm wondering about is to what extent am I overlooking sort of some of the key people, primarily the guys who run the company. Let me see if I can. Let me dig this up for you here. Um, oh, nope. What I'm doing is that I'm trying to sort out that the note that I got. Here we are. Um, so yeah, okay. Um, here here is the what I'm going to be taking a look at is some of the things that were important that Soren Peterson, he's a CEO there, he's pointed out. He says, well, Derek Pratt worked as master watchmaker for Urban Jurgensen for almost 30 years. He quite simply did not design the watches. Neither did Kerry Wooten Lonnen, for that matter. I guess there was some work they did together. All Urban Jurgensen's watch designs from the start of the 1980s until his death in 2010 was the owner, Peter Baumberger. So I think that this is important in pointing out. The reason I had talked about uh, the work of Derek Pratt was because there was a watch in that was in a collected man that was done in 1990 that had the observatory hands, and they had the so the caption on it read, these were made by Derek Pratt, which is sort of interesting. If you're making the hands, but you're not designing them, you're designing what? This is what I was trying to sort of sort out. And so here you have someone who is the sort of the not the guy behind the scenes, but rather the um, sort of the mastermind of the whole thing. And and so Baumberger is the guy that sort of pulled everything together. I'll put it that way. But apparently, he was also involved in a design. And so you have this guy who's, a buddy with George Daniels, and they were doing all of this stuff together. And there were certain kinds of movement parts and this and that. And I was trying to make it smoother than in fact it was. You want to give it credit. Say, okay, this is the guy who is everything behind it. But Baumberger was a guy who was, I mean, it sort of was it wasn't just one person. It was sort of the right chemistry together. And he said, like, for 30 years. And this was sort of a point where they left, they sort of invigorated Urban Jurgensen from the great watch company he had been years ago. So anyway, I just wanted to clarify that and talk about these things in terms of how we look at these things. Okay, let's see what's going on. Hi, Geezer. Hi, Logan. They got two Hans. Hans and Hans. That's handy. Okay. Maurizio. Hi, Mark. Let's see. Marco and Mark. We got a Mark and a Marco. Let's see. Okie doke, dokie 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 doke. All right. Geezer's getting a new watch. It's not the Nautilus, but the Aquanaut. So that's coming. That's a good thing. Congratulations on that, Geezer. All right. Foreman, the observatory hands. Yeah, me too. Would it be tacky if the hour hand encircled the Arabic numeral? Yes. How's that? No, this is the thing about it. The observatory hands, with that's way over there. The observatory hands with the big circle and then the pointer at the end of the hour hand. Now, and then you have the long, thin one that goes out and down right on top of the minute. So you may say, well, what's the point? How come they did that? To me, it's great. And I think Breguet had actually figured it out when he put the little moons on the end. And the reason for it is you can tell at a glance where the hand is, and a lot of times the hands might be harder to see. They're not on this one; they're pretty plain. But sometimes without something there to indicate which is which, like is this the minute hand or is this the hour hand? Boy, I tell you, there's no doubt about it with an observatory handset. You got this great big moon at the end of the hour hand, and so that sort of clears away all doubt. And then the minute hand is just a smooth line going in there. Hi, Zeus. How you doing? Um, okay. Okay. All right. So anyway, this I think has to do with these kinds of things. Now let me ask you this: um, where you have um, let's see, sort of major disagreements in terms of saying, okay, look, this watch is really great because of X, Y, and Z. If you get a Kerry Voot and Lonan, you would say, well, this is a great watch because of Kerry Voot and Lonan. If you get a Lang and Heim now, you can say, well, this is a great watch because the designs and the sort of everything was set up by Marco Lang, who now has his own company. But you can point to different things like this. A lot of people give Bever, what's his name? Biver. They gave him a big award and everything else for helping on the sort of bring things around. And there are those kinds of people in the watch business who are not just handling the day-to-day business, the design and getting the movement out, sort of the production end, but they also have to deal with a whole, everything from the finances to the marketing to the you name it. And so without somebody like that in a watch company, they may not do too well. And I think we see a lot of failures in sort of post quartz watch companies due primarily because um, they miss it one way or the other somehow. There are exceptions to it. I think one of the big exceptions are the Hubrings, the little Austrian company. Here's this husband and wife making these great watches that everybody loves, and in fact, I have one on. The But they're just going along. They're not charging a fortune. They're not making a huge production run on them. I mean, you almost get a hand built watch, and yet they're doing okay. Plus, they're gathering up uh, Grand Prix awards like nobody's business. And so when you look at this, say, okay, well, um, why would I want that? What is sort of what is behind it? Or if somebody says, okay, I think this is good, and somebody says, well, that was based on a 770, like they know what they're talking about. But it's these kinds of things I think I guess I begin to really question. Hi, Orange Han. Jean Claude Beaver. That's it, Mark. That's what I was trying to think of. Hans. Okay, anything over 10K and it gets flagged. All right. Um, I'm wearing my Harboring to Felix 15th anniversary today too. Man, that is one of the coolest watches. The 15th anniversary. I think they have a big 15 here where the 3 goes. It's really a cool idea. That's a neat watch. Um, Endrajet, I ask on High Horologist because Horona on Instagram said that Friedrich 2 and 3 from Langenheim used modified Unitas movements. Is that true? I've heard a lot of people say that. And, you know, uh, no, what it is that if you take a look at just about any watch, you're going to have certain things that are the same, namely a gear train, an escapement, and the escapement is most likely to be using a Swiss lever escapement. And when you look at it, you can look at any watch just about and say, well, that must have been based on that. It's true that just about every watch has something that you can find in an earlier watch, but I don't think that the Fredericks 2 or the Frederick 3 are that a lot like a close base. I've worked with a lot of 6498s, and so I know them pretty well. They're great movements, by the way, too, in their own right. So it's sort of like a sort of I don't want to sound too nasty about it, but it's almost like a cheap shot. And there's a lot of lazy expertise in this regard they'll find something back somewhere. It's sort of like the 770 thing, or the 7750, I guess, on the harboring. Well, they had done something with that. Well, yeah, they did, but you know, that doesn't mean it's be sort of transformed into one of those. It's There's a lot more to it than that. And if you try to, I'd like to see in fact, I'd very much like to see a 6498 on our trigonal bridge, like you find in the caliber 6, which is um, in the 1 and 2. You know, in the Frederick 2 and 3. What I'd like to do is, maybe wouldn't it be cool if we could get Marco Lang to answer? Maybe we can, I don't know, some way to get him to come on here and, have some of those kinds of questions. I know that they've been rattled around by people who they don't have a Langenheim, but they like to talk about them. Okay, how do you argue or explain dumb arguments like the harboring 2 of the 7750? Well, I mean, there's most people who know there's some connection to a 7750 read about it in terms of the write-up that the Harborings had. I mean, this wasn't something that was like, oh, this is a big secret. They they evolved not in terms of evolving like from one species to another. Well, yes, it is. I suppose it is evolved from one species to another. That where you're starting something, you're working with something. There's nobody at WOSOP. I think that's what it's called, WOSOP or WOSOP, one of the two. It's the if you take a look at what they do in the watchmaking schools, they use in 6498s and 6497s like mad. They're great learning ones, and so there's probably very few watchmakers who uh, who aren't using that. There's another one too that was really surprised me. It's like the guy that says, "Oh well, Kerry Voutilanen invented the observatory because I think it was 2007. He came out with a watch. It was called the Observatory." Uh, but what they didn't realize is that doesn't have Kerry. That's not a based Voutilanen movement. It was one of the ones that he had used at the time. I forgot what it was, but the the kind of thing, this goes back to another whole issue I think that's important to understand. I Probably more than anyone else I know, I've been in a pain in the neck and saying, what is your base movement here when these guys are trying to sell, five, six, seven, $8,000 watches that have a relatively inexpensive movement. Now, I'll say it's a cheap movement, relatively speaking. So if somebody plops in a Solita or an ETA, they're not paying as much for it as it would be to develop their own in-house movement, and then they don't tell the truth about it. All right, so they're deceptive in that sense. Okay, so you have that going on, and here I am, and other people too are saying, this just ain't right. Well, what's happened? What came out of that was that Solita and ETA must be bad movements. They're not. That, in fact, that was never should have even been the real point. The point is simply being upfront about it. Now, if somebody says, what would you rather have, this Acme watch that's got an in-house movement or an Acme watch that has an Agenhor movement? I'd take an Agenhor any day. So I think we've been sidetracked a lot by sort of the wrong kind of arguments, um, and it's because I think in no small part because there's some been deception going on in the watch business. A lot of the deception going on in the watch business, and we as part of the watch business are the people who buy the watches, and so we ought to have a say in that. We can't say, oh well, this is the way things are, and so you guys ought to go along with it because we've got all of these these really talented people. Well, we got we ought to be talented in the sense of finding out what we're paying for and what we're buying, because I think that's very important, and that's always been the issue. It's never been the issue that if, for example, the 2892 A2 ETA, it's a good movement. It's a really nice movement. Now, if somebody's selling a watch with a 2892 A2 in it, and they say this is what's in it, I'm fine with it because I know what I'm getting. On the other hand, if they call it the Acme 234, even though it's 2894, that's where the problem comes in. I think anyway. Is Kadoki one a good watch? They advertise as in-house movement, but I believe it's a Hodring base movement. Well, you know, um, the the place in Austria where the Hodrings have their company, and the Dresden area in Germany, there's uh, Kristen Klings, Marco Lang, and then the group at Langenheim sort of make up the Dresden group. I'll call it that. And so here you got Kadoki in there, and they're working. Kadoki and is working with Richard Harbring, okay, and they're probably hanging out with Marco Lang too, would be my guess, because they're all watchmakers and they're all in the Dresden area, and like I said, it's not too far from the little place in Austria where the Harbrings are. So you have certain kinds of things going on there. I mean, I think that if we really start digging, pretty soon we're saying, wait a minute, they ripped off Abraham Breguet, and at some point they probably did. And I think when we look at any of these things, and we're looking at, for example, with the Frederick II, where they have gold um, gears. Why they use gold gears? Well, there's a reason for it, and he talks about it and so forth in terms of the lack of corrosion and some other properties to have gold in the gears. That it's a good thing for it. Now, that's not exactly like the Unius 6498, even though there's some things about it that I just think are great. Okay, let's see what is going on here. Okay, so I answered about Kadoki. Kadoki 1, I like the Kadoki 2 better than the Kadoki 1, and I'll tell you why. And it's not just because it won an award, it did, but rather because I like it as I like the day-night function that he set up, and I like the way he set it up. Thing I like about Kadoki watches is that they're very clean watches. I like a watch that, doesn't that there's like harboring, you have influences like that when you have a sort of a certain group of watchmakers that are sort of hanging out together. Okay, let's see. There's only one for my yeah. Okay, let's see. 64 comes. Oh man, what are you guys talking about? Agenor and the Escasy. Oh God. Oh man, that's Foreman. That's something that I was expect the rancher to come up with, but that's a good one. Or that's another thing too. Take a look, and this is another thing I about Kerry Boot and Lonans. If you go and you look at the watches that aren't Kerry Boot and Lonan movements, it says so right there. I forgot what the observatory movement was, but it's like, oh, it's not like something super that he made. One thing I like about his, let me give an example of what you can do with a movement and really transform it. And I want to use Kerry Boot and Lonan as an example. Let's say you take some standard movement, some ETA movement that's like a 2892 or something like that, but we'll say a hand wound version like the 64 or the 6497 or 98, and you have everything in there, but you change it, and then you put in a great big balance wheel. Now that balance wheel itself transforms a great deal because a lot of different things have to happen to have that big balance wheel in there. And um, among other things, but I mean, you don't just have, I say, look, I want a big balance wheel, so I'm just going to pop it in the 6498 and call it a day. It involves a lot more than that. Um, okay, with all his dough, he gets the SS version. Who are you talking about? Who? Oh, Paul McCartney. Good for him. You know, anybody who gets the stainless steel version, you know that their major focus is on the movement, the caliber of the watch as an entity. Okay, gold I do, I gotta admit, I like platinum, but I really like the I, stainless steel. Most of my watches, I think, are stainless steel. Okay, hey Eric, how you doing? Pazoo, that's it, Indrajit. The Pazoo 260. That's the one that's in the observatory. A Pazoo, that's another one that was bought by ETA, and you have the Pazoo 7001, uh, ETA 7001 now that you find in so many different hand wound watches. Anyways, so there's that. Um, The rancher sells his jokes for a steep discount by in bulk. He may be having a sale for, but hey, Dr. A and B, what's up? Vascular and Constantin overseas movement and other VC Cartier. Now, the Vascular and Constantin overseas movement, the 5100, that thing was developed over a number of years and came out in 2016. That thing is a mucho nice movement. I wouldn't mind having a watch with that at all. And I happen to like the Quad Allele, and of course they quit producing it, which may be a benefit if the rest of you guys don't tell anybody what a good watch that is. Hey Joseph, what's up? See, yep. Okay, let's see. Pazoo 260 is one of the best movements. Kari uses NOS that he found for his observatory. The name comes from because the Pazoo 260 won the precision. Oh, great. Yeah. By the way, too, the observatory standards are pretty much the kind of stuff that you have in COSC and Meadows. It's the kind of thing that you measure the goodness of the watch movement against certain celestial observations. Hey, Dan, what's up? Watches are most often valuable because the dial was produced for a short period. And what about if the watch had the same dial material configuration, but the finish of the movement changed? I don't know. Dan, what you're talking about the financial worth. I mean, there was nothing in that entire statement about the movement. And I think if you have that's how come I like the 5100 and the 4000. Both of them are relatively new movements with Vestron Content 10. They use them in a lot of watches. Um, oh boy, I forgot the movement number on it, but there's one that Patek Philippe has that's in the 5124 that I liked, and sort of went on a silicon diet to want to buy silicon, watches. Do you remember cases where the type of change affected the value and rarity of the watch? It may have, I. This is one of the things I don't care about. I don't care about limited editions. Uh, they can make 10 crummy watches and call it a limited edition. That's not the point. If a watch has a limited edition because there's a lot of work and precision that goes into it, that's one thing. But a lot of they so-called limited edition, that just doesn't, to me, that's a sales gimmick, and when they do it that way. On the other hand, if you got some guy in a back room, oh, you take a Roger Smith, his editions are limited. Everything he does is limited because he does everything by hand, from grinding out the metal into the case to the final movement. So I don't know. I think we ought to move away from that kind of thinking, Dan, and You're just the man to help us do it. Let's see. I own a simple Junghans with a nicely decorated Pazu 7001. Yeah, there are a lot of watches like that. I had one. I was so mad at it that I finally traded it, but I had a really beautiful El Laura, and everything about it was beautiful until I found out it had a 7001 in it. Now, here you have a watch like this, and a 7001 is a pretty little movement, and so you end up with this little movement inside with this really long stem, so you can wind the thing. And then they lied about it, and I was furious about it. God, it's a gorgeous watch, and I traded it for my Kristen Vanderklaw. Um, do you want a truly original movement? Go to Arnold and Son and Armin Strom. Okay, let's talk about that. Armin Strom, I think no, it wasn't Armin Strom. It was another guy, Andrew Straher, who helped develop the movement in the Maurice Lacroix. But now here is one of the things that I did want to talk about, and we're out of time, and so make it quick. I heard from one person that they had nothing but problems with the Arnold and Son watches they got. This was a dealer. And then I found from some other people who are either owners or dealers saying, no, they've had great luck with them. So that's one of those things that I think it's important to resolve, because if somebody says, "Oh, a watch is terrible," and you pass on it, it turns out to be a great watch, and you can't get it anymore, something like that. You want to, you little, you know. So I think these kinds of things I think are worth discussing. Basically, the guy that told me he didn't like it, he says they get them in and they send them to their watchmaker to get them ready to sell, and there's nothing but problems with them. On the other hand, other people said, "Look, I had them and love them," so I don't know. And this is why I think it's important for us to discuss them, not passionately, but as with as much information as we can get for them. Okay. Um, yeah, right. Hans, that's right. All good watches are limited editions by the time the watch. Yeah, you get finished with the thing. Do you want to truly see good Arnold and Son? Okay, well, that's it. Armin Strom makes it very nice. Yeah, Armin Strom has some really good stuff on that. Well, look, guys, thank you all for coming. And let's sort of keep this in mind that we're trying to trying to get to the bottom of a lot of things where we end up getting the best we can for our money, because other than a couple people like Hans and Carl and Dan Smile, who are filthy rich, the rest of us, we gotta we gotta save our money. Okay, guys, take care, be super safe, and oh, I think Monday I got a vest pocket video I think you're gonna like. Take care.